We are live.
Well, a very warm welcome to today's talk. I'm your host, Elliot Levy, and I'm joined this morning by Elsewhen co-founder, Liam Gauman, and Senior Product Manager, Lisa Merkin. But today we'll be talking about from generative AI to generative UI. Do stick around for questions at the end. There will be some questions, but without saying anything else, over to you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Elliot. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. Quick intros. My name is Liam Gauman. I'm the founder and CPSO at Elsewhen, Chief Product and Strategy Officer. I'm a software engineer by background, and some of my thinking gets published in Sifted, VentureBeat, CTAM. I'll pass on to Lisa.
I'm Lisa Merkin. I'm a senior product manager. I've been working at Elsewhen for a couple of years, but in product for the last 10 years, working both at consultancies, but also in-house at client side. And more recently, I've been leading Gen AI projects from proof of concept through to production.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So very quick plug about Elsewhen. For those that don't know us, we're a digital product consultancy. Our mission is to accelerate innovation to solve your business critical problems. We've been founded about 10 years ago, servicing big tech. Today, our typical client is a FTSE 100 or S&P 500 company that wants to do things differently. And yeah, without further ado, into the topic of this webinar, from generative AI to generative UI. So at Elsewhen, we've been developing generative AI features for the past year with different enterprise clients. And particularly, we've been focusing this year on retrieval augmented generation, RAG, data labeling, and synthetic data. These are use cases that we today execute in production for our clients. And we've done this talk previously in a couple of events this year. Chief Disruptor Live and CIO Summit, our own Rebase community. And we've been asking people attending the talks just to understand, kind of a little temperature check to understand some of these concepts are people familiar with. And this is what we usually see, and I just wanted to share it with you today as well. So I usually ask who knows what RAG is, and about half of the room has their hands up. And then I ask who has experimented with RAG by building a POC, a proof of concept, and about half of the people that had their hand raised previously put it down. And then in terms of taking RAG into production, you would usually see one or two hands left. So I think that's an interesting information to share with you and kind of gives you an idea where you stand with this sort of stuff. And I want to give Lisa this floor to introduce RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, and our work with it with a recent project. So here you go, Lisa.
Thanks, Leon. So today I'm going to talk about a project we've done recently with WPP, the world's largest advertising agency. So we started with the brief. Next slide, please. How might we use generative AI to streamline audience creation during campaign planning? So for context, marketeers select audience segments for their campaigns based upon multiple data points, including demographics, finances, interests, and life events. The problem with that is that it takes time for marketeers to choose all of the right segments, which can lead to missed opportunities for the most effective marketing campaigns. So the high-level solution we proposed is to utilize proprietary data, because out of the box, LLMs aren't tailored to your specific organization. We also wanted to ensure it was grounded in facts to minimize hallucinations and also followed a predefined output format. So this works by a user inputting a question, which then gets processed by a smart retriever.
Terrible clicker.
All good. And then this smart retriever then searches through corporate data to retrieve the relevant data, which then gets combined with the input questions processed by the LLM generator to create a generated response. So as you'll see on the next slide, we'll have a quick overview of the project timeline. So within the first month, we built a chatbot as a proof of concept. We then started the UAT for this during month 2. In parallel, we started the platform integration. During month 3, we released a beta version to early adopters and also released the final production version to the UK market by the end of month 3. So by month 4, we had already kicked off work for phase 2. So why did we start with a chatbot? It's a low risk and a low friction way to gather feedback. It can be done asynchronously without needing a software engineer or a facilitator to moderate. We explored whether we should use Slack versus Microsoft Teams. Our client, WPP, used Microsoft Teams, as many other enterprise organizations. However, they have a very restricted API, whereas Slack is way more open to third-party integrations, which for our use case and wanting to do rapid iterations was more convenient. So you can just about see in the screenshot, I've described a marketing campaign, and then within a minute, there was 8 different audience segments that got responded. And each of those segments had a description explaining why they were relevant. So my campaign was a Jet to Holidays travel campaign, and some of the segments were frequent flyers, they were unconstrained couples, and hotel parents. So all very relevant to the original campaign. However, a Slack bot only goes so far. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we actually did this as part of a wider integration. So you can just about see this is a more complex architecture than just a chatbot. We used a bespoke application that we've been building for WPP for the last 5 years, which comprises of Google Cloud, React front end, and Python backend. So we also then launched to production within just 3 months, and it's currently still live in the UK, and we have the rollout plan to 32 countries. You can just about see from the screenshot that this is embedded into the core workflow. It's not just a separate chatbot on the side, it's seamlessly integrated. One of the first questions we had at the start of the project was, do we have enough data for this? And it's something that we had to then mitigate because we found some of the audience segments descriptions had just 3 words. So for example, premium supermarket shoppers. It's not very detailed or descriptive for an LLM. So we built a data enrichment pipeline to generate more context for an LLM. And it's also then became the foundation to support non-English languages. So in this example, premium supermarket shoppers became enriched to be more descriptive, including phrases like prioritizing quality, being middle-aged, health conscious, and supporting initiatives such as plastic reduction. All that help the LLM choose more interesting audience segments. The second question we had was, how do we have confidence in the output? Traditional QA in software development is about functionality, whereas in generative AI solutions, it's about the quality and the context of the output. So we introduced a concept called human in the loop. This is where product admins, humans, can manually review all of the generated AI outcomes and therefore decide whether they were suitable or not, ultimately giving the business the control they need to have confidence in the solution. This then led to the second concept was, how can we make this more efficient? How can we help the humans and the planners and the admins within WPP utilize their time most effectively? So we decided to then automate that QA with another LLM. So basically the LLM is then reviewing all of the audience segments descriptions against the original title and deciding whether that's likely to be accurate. And then the admins will know whether to prioritize which segments to prioritize. Do they look at the ones that the LLM thinks are highly likely to be accurate, or perhaps they should look at the ones with a low level of accuracy? So we built this solution in a model agnostic way. However, ourselves and also WPP are Google partners. So we use different Gemini LLM models, but this would also work with OpenAI or any other model as needed. So then just to wrap up some of the key learnings from delivering this Gen AI project into production. The first one was start small and ship quickly. Create a targeted small pilot for a specific use case. And then since when, we've already adapted it for 3 different applications. Secondly, augment existing workflows. By positioning the Gen AI capabilities as a way to enhance current processes, it helps secure stakeholder buy-in. We're not tripping on other people's toes. And thirdly, embrace flexibility. Progress in Gen AI projects isn't linear. Lean into the ambiguity and just prepare to iterate quickly. And I'll now hand back to Leon to talk about what's next.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So a little bit of an insight of the work that we do today with clients. And I'm here to talk a little bit about what we're thinking is next and where we see things developing. So to start this, I want to ask us, why was ChatGPT so successful when it was released? And we believe that OpenAI created an experience. They added a chat interface to a large language model, a piece of technology that's been around for a while, the transformer model first described by Google, and then utilized in big tech in internal tooling. OpenAI were the first company to actually release it to the wild and build an experience on top of a large language model. So you have this concept that we take today for granted. So text box for input, the output is streaming out word by word, the sequential interface that hides complexity of the prompt. It's completely fake. Large language models don't work that way, but it creates this feeling that you're talking to someone. Later, OpenAI also experimented with the plugin paradigm to build another layer of abstraction on top of a large language model, integrate third-party data. What I find interesting about this is that Sam Altman fairly quickly admitted that ChatGPT plugins aren't really taking off because people want ChatGPT in their applications, not applications in their ChatGPT. And this quote really I really hang to it because I think it's a very important way of looking at how you integrate intelligence into solutions. Most people think about large language model, they immediately think about OpenAI. So I just want to acknowledge that and show that essentially GPT technology developed by OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, they're all siblings on this tree of technical development. They're fairly similar. And what I'm trying to say here is that the difference between the models, the foundation models that are out today, there is different. And if you try to use OpenAI alongside Claude, you will notice the particular differences between the models. But in the end of the day, they're fairly similar, and they are siblings on this development of transformer technology and attention technology. We've seen this year also open source really starting to grow in this space, with Llama 3 being released fairly quickly after the latest developments by OpenAI caught up with it. And it's been also partially trained on synthetic data, which allowed it to be trained in a very fast manner. So you can see that open source is really a very likely possibility for this work. So if you jump to Hugging Face today, which is the GitHub for models, you would find hundreds of thousands of different size models, different size parameters, small, large, for unique and particular tasks. So what we're trying to say here is that the particular kind of specialty of models have been potentially commoditized. What we see on the UI side, on the experience side, is fairly naive. So we see this very thin UI layer most of the time, with the intelligence of the model plugged in raw, and essentially slapping a chat interface on everything. I think Microsoft is the most guilty at this. And it reminds a little bit of what was happening with computing in the early stages of the desktop computer, essentially the command line. So we think that we are currently in the command line era of AI. So you can see a command line on the left-hand side from Unix, and on the right-hand side is ChatGPT. They're fairly similar concepts of putting commands into a computer. So our position at Elsewhen is that with generative AI, intelligence itself becoming a commodity. the key differentiator is about shaping that commodity to solve the right problem in the right way. So LLM is not the product, potentially. It's a commodity. Where is the product? And we think it's about abstracting prompting further into the background. So if you watched Apple releasing Apple Intelligent recently, they're thinking in a similar way. It's GUI, it's not chat in Apple Intelligence. You wouldn't find a chat interface anywhere. It's all baked further into the operating system, and you can, say it's done well or less so well, or is it very differentiated in terms of the final capability of the LLM? I think there can be a lot of different opinions. However, the way that Apple is showing is that they completely abstract the technology. So the user doesn't care what they're using, they just care about the benefit, and it's seamlessly integrated into the experience. I want to touch this idea of multimodality and how it's pushing things even further when you think about how we might interact with this technology in the future. So this year we saw OpenAI desktop app and Anthropic computer use being released. It's essentially layering of AI interaction on top of a GUI paradigm. So multimodality, AI's world building, so AI being able to understand words, but also see and understand what is in front of it, allows it to move stuff around on your desktop. It can read terminal outputs, and it can essentially use the tool designed for human use. But if you think about this breakthrough, potentially all of this human tooling is going to move into the background, and we might see something completely new emerging as the paradigm of interacting with this capability. If you think about before, we've seen this happening was in the mobile phone space. They used to look like little desktop computers, and potentially, again, all of this capability is going to move into the background, and we'll see a new paradigm emerging. So coming back to our idea, we think that the future of generative AI lies behind intelligent interfaces and this idea of generative UI, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit. Excuse me. So what is generative AI? If you think about today, we use static UI. So basically, you have a predetermined set of components that are tracking a particular user journey in a finite state with beginning or end and different kind of possibilities. We would like to think about a piece in that UI that is completely generated by the LLM. And maybe the next step is the entire UI is completely generated by an LLM. And then beyond that is kind of the point that I was raising earlier. Maybe it's moving into some other paradigm that is quite different from how we interact today with our software. So let me talk a little bit about the early blocks that we think are showing us the way of this is actually happening and what we're working with to try and push these concepts further. If you think about AI developer tools that emerged fairly recently in the last couple of years, AI code editors like Cursor, GitHub Copilot, or Replit, they allow the generation of code because the models have been trained on code repositories, provide auto-completion for code, you can chat with documentation, essentially this emergence of AI developer. The really key here is the generative element of the coding experience and code being generated. But then, it just feeds into regular developer experience. What we've seen even more recently is this idea of generative user interfaces completely being developed by a large language model. So you have tools like Versal V0 and Llama Coder. They create whole applications using prompting. You essentially describe what you want, and in this case, in V0 case, React gets created. So it's whole React components. So in here, I say, I want to create a data dashboard, and on the right-hand side, I have a bunch of React compliant best practices, standard JavaScript and HTML being generated, which is pretty interesting. And this is the kind of the vein we're feeding with the idea of generative UI. The example you've seen previously, V0, is utilizing this library. So as any concept, it should be grounded in technology. And here I'm showing one of the basic building blocks to be able to create the type of experience we're talking about, the generative UI experience. SHAD CN is one of the first UI component libraries that's been designed with this in mind. So it's very lightweight. It's easily styled with Tailwind CSS. It's completely copy-pastable, so it has no dependencies. And it's essentially a perfect building block for a fully prompted-based library. Let me describe at a very high level how a generative UI app might look like. So in our case, it's a static application with a generative UI component in it. The application creates a prompt that interacts with an LLM. It potentially grabs additional context, maybe using RAG, retrieval augmented generation, the same way as Lisa showed us. It can go to traditional databases. It can go and maybe interact with some machine learning algorithm we have to grab additional data. And then it brings it all together and composes a prompt. And part of the prompt is prompting a GUI library, which is essentially a design system. So a SHAD CN component library that's been styled with our brand guidelines as a design system. It then on the fly composes a response, which is a generative UI component. And that's at a high level is the concept we're talking about today. So some principles to help think about generative UI. Some or all of the UI is generated by the large language model on the fly through prompting. It integrates a component library that creates a design system. It moves away from prefabricated multiple state solution to at least some parts of the solution to be determined by the response of the large language model. It could have a chat interface as part of the solution, but it requires a higher level of abstraction. And most importantly, it can adjust to the jobs to be done in runtime on the basis of the large language model's reasoning. So a few final thoughts where we even push this a bit further. What we're talking about internal, what we're thinking about is this idea of, is this type of technology going to kill the traditional SaaS model? So is it going to usher a generation of tools that are AI native tools that are highly aligned with the jobs to be done? So if you think about software as a service, it really exploited the vacuum, not in a bad way, but it just put software where software didn't exist and created an early one-size-fit-all solutions. And the secret sauce of AI has been commoditized now. So if it does have an AI component, which was machine learning previously, today it's a commodity, it's a foundation model, something that any organization can pick up and work with. So in that case, the value capture is really in that bespoke solution that is built on the model on top. And if you think about a solution that is highly aligned with the jobs to be done of a user and the organizational process, utilizing technologies like generative AI, it can really make SaaS solutions obsolete. So just a final thought. I'm going to jump into a generative UI case study, an early piece of work that explored some of these concepts with one of our clients. One of our clients is CBRE Turner & Townsend. It's a projects control company that is part of CBRE, and they look at projects and they kind of control the complexity of projects like the Elizabeth line or the Shard, so really, really large infrastructure projects. The organization is targeting 2.1 in gross margin improvement by 2030. They want to increase efficiency from becoming more data-driven and less reliant on manual processes. So our work really feeds into that to be able to show that target moving. So we asked ourselves, how can we use generative AI to create better client reports more efficiently? It's an area we decided to target for a bunch of reasons, but one of them is that it finds that sweet spot of internal tooling when you can work with more experimental technology. So consultants in Turner & Townsend create reports for the clients for QBRs, quarterly business reviews meetings, and insights are generated from multiple data points: government legislation, macro industry trends, political landscape, portfolio performance. And the problem is that it takes many hours to manually gather and consolidate the insights into a tailored client reports, sorry. So we come up with this concept of generative AI QBR report. It's essentially AI-generated QBR agent and dashboards containing the prompt insights. It's highly bespoke to the nature of the data and a particular use case. At scale that TNT operates, and we will be saving 14,000 hours per year across 200 clients. It's a really big number and a lot of work hours, and shifts that target that CBRE TNT are targeting. So a few considerations. If you do decide to start a project like that, that includes generative UI components, you should define clear brand guidelines to ensure any generated UI elements stay visually cohesive to the brand identity. So think about UI volatility. So establish UX patterns for what elements should remain consistent, especially critical and regulated sectors where sudden changes can impact user confidence. And you should think about organizational alignment. So ensure cross-team alignments, especially for marketing and support teams, if there will be changes to existing interfaces. So let me jump to what can we do today at Elsewhen in terms of our AI capabilities. So firstly, our AI services. We can harness AI potential to uncover opportunities tailored to your business needs, from road mapping to strategizing integration. We can help you democratize data, empower teams with accessible solutions, choose the right models for the right tasks, and build the right tools to meet their specific needs. We can help maximize AI's impact, seamlessly integrate, scale, and support AI adoption to drive sustainable growth. Some of our solutions that we've been developing with clients this year: the retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. You've seen the example today with Lisa. If you have any more questions, please reach out. You can blend your proprietary data with foundational models to ensure the right information is delivered at the right time. Copilot, create AI tools that embed seamlessly into workflows and that understand the task at hand. And autonomous agents, streamline operations and enhance efficiency with AI agents, allowing you to focus on strategic tasks that add value. We will be shortly, I think in a couple of weeks, releasing our autonomous agents white paper, so watch out for that as well. And that's it. Thank you very much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure. We're done with the presentation.
Thanks, guys. Really interesting. Really great to hear what's happening on the ground and what's happening next. There are some questions split quite nicely, actually. We've got some RAG questions, which I'll direct at Lisa first, and we have some on generative UI as well. First and foremost, Lisa, where is RAG most useful, and do all Gen AI solutions need RAG?
Thanks, Elliot. It's a great question. So RAG is most effective in areas that need accuracy, consistency, and repetitive data retrieval. So it's something that you don't want to do necessarily if you're not fussed about the accuracy, or it's like a creative task like storytelling or brainstorming, but it's something where it needs to be reliable. This may be for like customer services or financial services, where RAG can pull from a product catalog or a set of policy database. So something where you always need it to be correct. So for example, on WPP, we didn't want audience segments that were age 20 to 24, and then the next time you generate it age 21 to 25. We needed it from a set predefined list. And it'd be the same with if you were looking at generating finding the right policy for like insurance or something. You don't need to know on average what the industry is. You need to know specifically for that organization or that use case. So those would be the three key value propositions: accuracy, consistency, and repetitive tasks.
Cool. And the next question is, what are some of the common challenges found in implementing RAG?
So I think there's three main challenges that you get with implementing RAG. So I think firstly, it's around data quality. So this is also something we encountered with WPP in terms of confidence in the data and descriptive data. And it also requires like a structured knowledge base. This doesn't mean that it's always a blocker, as we also demoed, that you can also mitigate this. And I think this is something you're definitely seeing an increase of externally, like in the industry, is the rise of compound AI systems. So you're not trying to get one LLM or one task to do everything. You break things down into smaller steps to make things less daunting. The second challenge, I think, is around latency or like performance. So I think one of the first times we did our data enrichment pipeline, it took one of our engineers all night to run it locally on his machine, which obviously as we scale, you can always mitigate this. But initially, you do need to think about, do the users of this tool need the answers in real time? Can they wait 10 seconds, 30 seconds? What does that look like? And then there's also costs associated with that that you need to look into. And then the final area or challenge, I think, with implementing RAG is the complexity of doing it properly. So what we don't want is, like we see, just random chatbots here, there, and everywhere. And I think this is the fundamental reason you see all the headlines around businesses not realizing value or productivity gains from AI is due to the execution. And I think what you really want it to be is a seamless experience that users aren't thinking, oh, I'm using an AI tool. They just want to get their jobs to be done complete. And I think that therefore requires effort, time, experience, thinking from product, design, engineering. You've got to integrate it properly. And I think one of the slides I had earlier was showing the architecture of the solution. Our AI changes were at the heart of that integration. They weren't just on top. So therefore, it requires nuance and experience to do that proper integration. So yeah, those would be my three areas: data quality, latency, and integration complexity.
Yeah, really interesting. And for Leon, there's one here. Can you talk a bit more about the death of SaaS and how GenUI and even perhaps agents are going to intersect with
it? Sure. So the idea is that in the previous kind of cloud and SaaS revolution, there was a lot of business sense for a company to create a very general solution that can then apply to a lot of different companies. And we think that with the next rewrite or a configuration of enterprise around AI, that sort of business advantage is going to go away because the general layer is the foundational model. And that's something that doesn't make much sense to be the SaaS on top, because you just, the cost is on top of the cost of the foundational model token, and it just becomes prohibitively expensive to sell something like that. So if we take that advantage away, then having a general UI layer on top of a foundational model is just a really bad solution. And it's, you can also struggle to resell it. So it's much more cost effective and convenient for a organization to pick up the same foundational model and create something that is highly customized to the particular job at hand or the particular process the organization has. And you can see recently Klarna very vocally announced that they got rid of Salesforce and they got rid of Workday because they could design an agent and UI system that is based on a foundational model that is, highly tailored to their business and into their needs, and probably pay a lot less for that. So I think it's definitely a big risk for these sort of businesses. And you can see also, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, is, go anywhere he would be listened to, telling them that that's not the case. But at the moment, they're trying to pivot the entire business. Even the pricing point, they're trying to move away from seats because it just doesn't make sense anymore. So yeah, we really see something interesting that is happening here.
Cool. And another question is, will this get rid of designers, the generative UI stuff? Will we still need designers when this all hits?
I think we'll need design even more, because when technology gets commoditized, the real differentiator is the design of that technology. So I think the design work here is even more important. And I think the scope of a designer is larger, because you really need to understand how do you bridge the jobs to be done and the process with the capability in LLM and create an experience that is right for that particular use case to really grab the value. Because the foundational models are commoditized. This is not where the opportunity for differentiation is. The opportunity for differentiation is in designing that commodity in the right way. So I think actually the other way around. Maybe the way we do it and how we do it and what we work with is going to change, but the idea of generative AI is not getting rid of designers. No, not at all.
Cool. And I think we've got one last question here. There's a need for better intranet UIs for internal information sharing. Do you see any user level solutions for this, perhaps building sites in WordPress, SharePoint, or Confluence? That's for either of you.
Yes, I think we believe a lot in the employee experience and the idea of creating tools that internal users or employees will actually want to use. And both because you're going to get a better tool, you're going to have productivity drive, but also if people enjoy using their tools, they get a productivity drive. And obviously with AI, there's this whole other opportunity of offloading some of the tasks that are, better done by a machine to AI to create a much more high quality, holistic experience for the user. So it's a big focus for us. And we believe that, you can go even further than just invest in WordPress or SharePoint or Confluence. Our clients are, investing significant resources to build really high quality software for their users. It's also an opportunity to unlock a lot of internal data assets, and how you create bespoke tools around them. So if I go even one step beyond WordPress, SharePoint, Confluence, when some organizations utilize Tableau, Power BI, so that's again like another step forward of creating bespoke data dashboards. But we really like to focus at going way beyond that. We're actually creating dedicated tools and platforms that utilize organizational data to streamline processes.
Great, and I believe that is the last of the questions. Thank you for that, and thank you both for a very insightful talk. Thank you everyone for joining. If anyone in the audience would like to know more, we have an entire white paper on this topic online at elsewhen.com. And as Leon mentioned earlier, we will have another white paper on agents coming out in a few weeks, so please keep an eye out for that. But yes, everyone have a lovely day. Feel free to get in touch if you have any more questions, and thank you all again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Really enjoyed this. I hope it was useful for you. Have a great day.
Thanks all.